In this lesson, we're going to talk about how to avoid having your expenses creep up, especially as you're getting started out as an online tutor. We hear you have to spend money to make money, but we also have to think about what's reasonable and what's an effective use of your funds and how you can keep those costs down. Robert Kiyosaki said, "It's not how much money you make, but how much money you keep." And that's very true as an online tutor. One way to stay competitive and keep your rates from getting up to the point where fewer families can afford you is to make sure that you're managing your costs and your expenses. It lets you keep your rates affordable, and it also lets you keep more of your profits. So the first step for this is to define your essentials. You need to decide what you really need to do a good job as a tutor. Here's where we have that list of tools from Module 2. The software you're going to use, what you already have, the materials that you have, and what you have that you can already use or what's already in place for your business. Then look at what's missing. Think about what software and subscriptions you need first. So that might be things like making sure your home internet connection is strong enough for extended online tutoring, making sure that you have a copy of your own of any software or materials that you used as a teacher, you used when you were working for a company. If you're investing in software, investing in tools, make sure you're picking something powerful and all-purpose, and avoid spending a little bit of money here and a little bit of money there on resources that really you're not going to use as consistently. And remember that if you narrow your lesson down to the essentials, and even if you feel like things are basic and you'd rather be doing it a different way, kids aren't going to notice what's missing in your lesson. They might say like, "Oh, well, can we play that game we used to play in your office?" And if you have a different activity instead and you say, "Oh, no, sorry, I don't have that one here," it's not going to bother them. You don't have to keep things exactly the same, and you don't have to have the same tools as another tutor, and you don't even have to have like all the things you wish for as a tutor to do a great job. Once you get started, you'll start to see where the gaps are and where you notice you're spending a lot of time or where you feel like you're not quite getting the results that you hope. And that's where you can start planning to add tools, add resources that are going to make your job easier and that are going to make you a better tutor. So my essential tools for online tutoring were the things that if I were starting over tomorrow or when I started out initially, the things that were most important. One is a strong internet connection. We had trouble in my house where whenever the front of the house heated up in the middle of a sunny day, the internet would start to go out. And my husband is the expert in that area, and he did a few different things. He moved the router around. He called the cable company. We went through a few different steps, and ultimately what needed to be done was the line outside the house had to be replaced. But in the meantime, those interruptions in internet really were detrimental to my business. I had some sessions that I had to refund and a few that I had to reschedule. And at the time, I only had a few daytime students in my schedule, and it wasn't terrible, but it was definitely disruptive. So a strong internet connection is a must as an online tutor. A laptop with enough RAM and a strong enough processor are also really essential. When I first started out, I had 4 GB of RAM. That was enough. I upgraded to 8 in the last year, and that has been fantastic. I can have everything I want open at the same time. With the upgraded processor, things happen more quickly. So that was important for me as I filled my caseload and I had 2 or more students in a row to be able to have more things open at a time and to be able to switch quickly from one student to another. My next essential is Google Drive. I use it for everything. I love that it's all cloud-based, so if I am not able to get into my computer, I can still get to my files. It's easy to share files with students or parents, and everything is open right in the Chrome browser, so everything is in one place for sharing for my lesson. It would be harder if I had to have Microsoft Word open over here and then a web-based game over there and then PowerPoint over here. it's much more streamlined for sharing to just have everything in one Chrome window. I use everything in the Google Suite. I use Docs for my word lists. I use Slides for my card deck and some other things. I use Sheets for keeping my student records, and it's all in one place, which is great. And then finally, content, whatever content you need to be able to teach your lessons. They say you could teach reading with like a stick at scratching in the dirt. You just need letters, right? Letters and words. So you are going to use whatever you feel comfortable with and whatever is your simplest form of a lesson. So for me, that is a word list that I write myself or have written in the past, and some decodable text that focuses on that concept. You can find free decodable text online. You can write your own word list. You really don't need to buy any materials for that part. That's the basics. Having some way to assess students, having some reliable source of decodable text is very important for having good Orton Gillingham lessons, at least. And that's sort of what I started out with. That was my baseline. Isn't that lesson boring? Isn't it boring for the kids, boring for me? Eventually, yes, if I planned to keep it up with just that forever, it would be pretty boring and those lessons would be a little flat. But that doesn't mean you need to have everything at once. And before I invested in a lot of the OG resources I have now, I used a lot of web-based games, and I would just preview them, or I would search for sight word games or search for syllable games, and they're around. They can be challenging to find. And I also used a lot of text on the web, so a lot of articles, a lot of ebooks from my library to switch things up and make them lively. Ultimately, you are the teacher, like you are the draw in these lessons. Students could play the games on their own. They could log into another website for edutainment. They could watch Sesame Street videos. They could watch Roblox videos. There's lots of entertainment on the computer. Your job is to help them improve their skills by delivering this lesson. So yes, I would be bored and frustrated as a tutor if for years and years all I had was those basic tools. But we're talking about a short period of time where you get things up and running and you just need just enough to get started. You don't need to have everything right away. So how do you budget for those resources? At first, you're going to have to invest some money in your business. You may have a great computer and internet connection. You may have from your in-person tutoring a lot of the materials you need, but odds are you're going to have to invest something. When money comes in, when you start to make money as a tutor, you can start setting aside a percentage to invest in resources as you go. I recommend the book Profit First by Mike Michalowicz, and he talks a lot about how to set your business up from the beginning to make a plan for turning a profit, for paying your taxes, for having operating expenses, and ways to do that with your banking to sort of stay within those budgets. And I think it was helpful for me because at first I was afraid to spend anything in my business, to reinvest anything. And over time, I would grudgingly buy a book here or a book there, just like I would as a teacher. I was looking at it as coming out of my family budget, like, oh, well, I'd really like this book for my class, but I have to wait until, after birthdays or after Christmas to make that investment. And then I've shifted my thinking to realize that my business needs to buy resources for my business. So think about setting aside a percentage of your tutoring income to invest in those resources. Don't be afraid to do those upgrades. A lot of them really pay off, and there are a lot of amazing resources out there. But you don't need to have it all right away, and you can keep a wish list. And if something keeps coming up or you have a new student with a new need, you'll make room in your budget to start adding those new tools. Things to think about for the future that you might want to upgrade. Training. Think about maintaining or advancing your certifications. Think about PD or new curriculum you might want to train in, or branching out into a new content area. Think about budgeting for that in your business. The fun stuff, the game subscriptions, the shiny teachers pay teachers activities with the great clip art, those are things that you can certainly invest in down the road. Curriculum. As I said, new students are usually what drive my new curriculum, or a student reaching a new level makes me say like, oh, I could use more on Latin and Greek roots. So those resources um, will become necessary down the road, and you want to make sure you have some money set aside so you can invest when it's time. Efficiency tools. As your business grows, you're going to find that there are certain repetitive tasks that would be better done by a piece of software. So that can be things like investing in a tutor management software that's going to handle your scheduling and your billing and your parent communication all in one place. That could be investing in pre-written word lists or pre-made games that make it easier for you to deliver your lessons and save you a lot of prep time. That could be things like game subscriptions so that you're not spending lesson planning time searching for just the right activity. For me, one of my big investments was the Smart Notebook software with Smart Learning Suite Online, because I was working with students on Chromebooks. And that's a tool that lets you give the students access through their website, and then the lesson becomes interactive for them in a way that it can't be on the Chromebook. They can't take control of the Zoom screen. And it's also nice for building games and interactive activities. So that was one of my upgrades this year. You may also want to spend money down the road, or need to spend money down the road, on business tools. Things like a payment processor. We'll talk about those in a little bit. Calendar services, QuickBooks. I started out with a spreadsheet and eventually decided that my finances were complicated enough that it was worth it to have QuickBooks. You may want business training. You may want training on how to use these tools or how to do more marketing. You may want to invest in marketing. You may want to do advertising or have better business cards made. There are lots of things that you could spend money on, and all of these things can kind of go on your wish list. And I have like car magnets. I said I was going to get car magnets for my car and my husband's, and they've been on my wish list and they keep getting pushed further down. And at first they got pushed further down because I had other things that I needed to spend the money on, and I wanted better curriculum and I wanted to upgrade my technology. And then they started getting pushed down the list because my business filled up without them, and I decided they weren't really a need. They're pretty cool. It would be pretty cool to let my neighbors, see what I do, and have sort of the um, get to be a name in town and have people know that that's what I do and contact me for it. But I'm doing fine without them. And so that is something that got pushed off the bottom of my wish list because I waited long enough that I didn't need it anymore. Another thing you may want to budget for in the future is help. As I said at the beginning, there are times when you're going to want to consult an accountant or a lawyer about business issues especially as you get started, but also as you grow. And you may also reach the point where you decide you want an accountant to prepare your taxes, or you want a virtual assistant to handle your marketing and your requests, or your website isn't what you hoped it would be and you want to hire a web developer to do something more professional. You may decide you want to expand and hire additional tutors. So all of these investments can come down the road. Think about setting aside some money so that you can take those opportunities, but also keep it in perspective. What do you need to do to successfully teach the students you have? And what do you need to do to get to the next level? And all of this stuff comes in stages. It doesn't happen all at once. A rule I learned from my dad, and I think about it every time I put my credit card in for something that's recurring, is never buy anything that eats. That was his philosophy about leasing cars and getting pets and buying something like a video game system where you always want new games. And which is not to say we didn't have anything like that growing up, but his philosophy was that you needed to think about the recurring costs of things and what they were going to end up costing you down the road if you made this one simple purchase now. And that's an important way to think about expenses in your tutoring business too. Some recurring expenses to keep an eye on as a tutor are Zoom. It's free for one-to-one meetings and for groups of up to 45 minutes. I used the free version of Zoom for more than 2 years of online tutoring before I got into using my second device as a document camera or using it as sort of a backup when I had some audio issues. So until then, I really didn't need the paid version of Zoom, and you may not need it for quite a while either. If you're looking to save money on bookkeeping expenses, Wave is a free alternative to QuickBooks. I can't compare them directly, but I do know some tutors that successfully use Wave. And it is fully featured. It keeps track of expenses. You can do invoicing with it. And it doesn't carry the monthly subscription that QuickBooks does. A free way to transfer money is Zelle. If your bank and your client's bank both participate, they can send you money directly through that app without a fee. Other options are Venmo and PayPal for keeping costs low. You can have clients mail you checks. This may work, especially if you're getting paid monthly and they're going to do it once a month. The cost of a stamp is less than the 2 to 3% you would pay to a payment processor. You can also choose lots of free games and activities over a paid subscription. Especially with the younger kids, there are lots of literacy games on abcia.com and PBS Kids that you may have to do a little searching, a little digging to find the right activity for you, but it is less expensive than a monthly subscription to something like WordWall or BookWidgets or buying Boom Card sets over and over again for your tutoring. And finally, avoid a subscription to a service for reading like Epic or Raz Kids and try to find the books you need in your public library first, or even buy Kindle editions of single books or small sets rather than having a recurring expense for a subscription that you may only use periodically. So those are some thoughts about how to keep your expenses low as a tutor. And we're going to talk next about tools you can use absolutely for free to build your tutoring business without having to lay out a lot of money at first.